Tel Aviv, June 14th, 2025. 6:42 in the morning, Aaron is sitting in his living room. He's still wearing his jacket even though it's 30 degrees inside the apartment. Not because he's cold, because he hasn't taken it off since 2:19 a.m. when he ran into the shelter with his wife and daughter right after the third explosion. Aaron is not a panicker. He works in cybersecurity. His job is to protect information. He knows systems can fail. But until tonight, he believed that at least the command structure would stay untouched. That lasted until he looked out the window and saw smoke rising over the Kirya, the main headquarters of the Israel Defense Forces. He knows that skyline. He lives 4 streets away. He knows his former colleagues work there. He knows that's where the servers are. That's where decisions are made. And today, that's where a missile hit. The media report: the system identified the threat with a delay. The AI classified the object as a reconnaissance drone, not a kinetic warhead. Reprogramming did not engage in time. Aaron doesn't need more than that. In the world of data, a mistake like this is death in 3 clicks. In the neighborhood WhatsApp group, a video appears. A yellow ball of fire over the Kirya, then an explosion, then blackout in several towers. Was the system overloaded? Did the simulation fail to distinguish a real target? Why has the IDF been silent for 4 hours? Aaron doesn't type anything. He makes coffee, stares at the screen. He watches the technology he once thought was a miracle turn into a question with no answer. On the wall, his daughter is drawing a yellow circle. "Is that our house, Daddy?" "No, that's the sky," he replies. And in that moment, Aaron understands. This sky is no longer fully theirs. Not anymore. June 13th, 2025 is a day that shouldn't have happened. And yet it did, not because the system collapsed completely, but because it failed in the most sensitive spot of all, in the heart of command itself. The strike on the Kirya base, partial, not total, partly intercepted but real, was not just a hit on infrastructure. It was a hit on a symbol. A reminder that no shield is absolute, because technology, like a human being, has limits. Energy limits, decision-making limits, cognitive limits. And artificial intelligence can be brilliant, and still helpless when it meets chaos designed by another AI. The June 13th attack was not a classic one. It was a multi-layered operation. Ballistic missiles, drones from Lebanon and Syria, radar jamming, digital masks, fake targets generated by AI systems. Israeli military sources admitted, in some moments the Iron Dome system had to make decisions faster than it could fully analyze the data. Which means only one thing: Iron Dome wasn't just fighting an enemy. It was fighting cognitive overload. For 15 years, Iron Dome was a story about security you could calculate. About a system that worked precisely, logically, without emotion. But on June 13th, emotions came back. Because despite all the simulations, people started being afraid again in a very human way. If even the Kirya could be hit, where is there left to hide? And then the question appears, the one no one wanted to hear out loud. Is the dome still our shield? Or just the memory of how good that shield used to be? Welcome to the new era of defense. In this era, it's no longer just about stopping a rocket. It's about recognizing intent, detecting manipulation, telling a real target from an illusion. Which means Iron Dome was a starting point. It won't be enough for what comes next. Hey, today I'm going to tell you the story of a system that was supposed to be perfect, of an algorithm that was supposed to protect human life, of a dome that was meant to keep war and everyday life in 2 separate worlds. But a few days ago, that system cracked. Not completely. Not in a Hollywood explosion, but just enough for people to start asking questions they'd never dared to ask before. Today I'll show you how it looked from the inside. Not from a satellite's view, from an apartment 4 streets away from a base that was supposed to be untouchable. And maybe, like Aaron, you'll realize this sky is no longer just Israeli. Not entirely. Let's begin. Every technology has a breaking point. Iron Dome was built as an answer to a very specific kind of threat. Short-range rockets, slow, cheap, crude, chaotic. But the world is changing. War is evolving. And the question is no longer, does the dome work? But will it still be enough tomorrow? Drones, swarms of drones, smart maneuvering missiles, simultaneous strikes from multiple directions. This isn't science fiction. This is 2025, and it's the biggest challenge for systems like Iron Dome, because the problem isn't just intercepting a rocket anymore. It's telling a real attack from a digital smokescreen. In the last simulation drills, the Israeli Defense Network was tricked by AI algorithms generating fake targets. The conclusion was clear. We need a new dome. Not made of iron, made of information. The Israeli government is already investing in the successor, a laser system codenamed Iron Beam, Karen Barzel. Prototypes have already shot down drones and mortar shells. Lasers are cheaper, faster, less vulnerable to overload. But they are not the full answer. Lasers don't work well in bad weather. They need enormous amounts of energy. They can't read intention. They just fire light. And today we need more than light. We need prediction, analysis, adaptation. The new battlefield is the data layer. That's why the Israeli military is working hand in hand with high-tech companies on an integrated predictive defense system. More than radar, an ecosystem of sensors, satellites, AI, deep learning, built not just to react but to anticipate. It won't be a shield, it'll be a horizon. A system that knows something is coming before anyone presses the launch button. But just as important as new systems are new social answers. More and more cities are building local resilience centers. Schools run workshops on stress management. They teach how to function without apps, without alerts, without a digital safety belt. A new generation, aware that Iron Dome protects them, but also confines them, is asking more and more often, can we build a world where we don't need protection from the sky at all? Every system becomes the past eventually. Every revolution loses its sharpness once it becomes normal. Iron Dome was, and is, a technological miracle. But miracles aren't enough when the world is accelerating faster than the sirens. Iron Dome was a reaction. Today, Israel wants to be half a step ahead of reality. Not just reacting, but predicting. Not just building systems, but building a culture of strategic imagination. Because in a world where an attack can be cyber, biological, informational, or social, the old idea of a shield stops making sense. New Israeli defense doctrines talk more and more about total awareness, full situational awareness. That's not just radar. It's monitoring social moods, cyberspace, biological data, trade flows, and weather patterns. Anything can be a signal of what's coming. In the IDF Operations Center in the Kirya, data flows in from hundreds of thousands of sources, satellites, apps, servers, urban sensors. The system flags anomalies on its own. If in one district people suddenly start Googling nearest shelter, that's an alert. If in a specific language, online chatter around the word attack explodes, that's a signal. New generations of defense algorithms don't just predict rocket trajectories. They predict who might launch them, when, and in what context. They merge socio-political data with electronic signals. They draw a picture of the situation before the first warning beep. This is no longer classic defense. This is security as a socio-technical project. A new generation of Israeli military and civilian leaders doesn't talk only about resilience anymore. They talk about flexibility, adaptability, the ability to change mode fast. Don't prepare for the last war. Prepare for the one that could come. That's the slogan of the IDF's new training program for commanders. The citizen is changing too. Schools teach kids how to spot disinformation, how to assess risk, how crises unfold. New civic platforms let residents report potential threats, not as informants, but as co-creators of security. Israel is starting to export not just systems, but models. Crisis prediction training? Predictive algorithms. Strategies for living with instability. It shares what it has learned about building a culture where you react before you have to react. In international reports, Israel is described not just as a military tech leader, but as a laboratory of future security, which means a country of fear has turned into a country of scenarios. Every system needs trust, but when that trust becomes unconditional, technology starts to look a lot like religion. In Israel, You increasingly hear not questions about whether Iron Dome will work, but how it could ever fail. That's not doubt, that's blasphemy. At Raphael's labs, people work like in a temple. Code is sacred. Tests are ritual. Every system update is treated with reverence. Because a bug isn't just a technical glitch, it's a national sin. A crack in the unspoken promise. The dome will always protect us. But every system has limits. And in a society that built its survival story on the infallibility of technology, every malfunction feels religious. People don't ask what failed, they ask who failed. In this new world of technological security, engineers become a kind of priestly caste. They don't just design systems, they interpret reality. They decide what counts as a threat. Their lines of code map directly onto life and death. Private companies are creating moral engineer teams, AI ethicists, not to limit algorithmic power, but to understand its consequences. Because when code is making decisions, someone has to answer the question, should it? A society addicted to system performance reacts with hostility to any critique. Experts who talk about the dome's limitations get attacked in the media. NGOs that ask about the social cost of permanent alerts are accused of lacking patriotism. This isn't just a policy debate, it's a holy war over narrative. Anyone who questions the very idea of the dome becomes a heretic, an internal enemy. The future won't have clear front lines, it will have internal arguments. Between those who want to keep relying on technology and those who want to step away from it. Between those who worship the dome and those trying to rebuild a world in which the sky is a sky again, not just an interface. In 2025, Israeli philosopher Uri Ben-Zur publishes an essay titled After the Dome, A New Ethics of Defense. He writes, "The dome didn't save us from fear, it only organized it." The text becomes a manifesto for the security reset movement, which demands civilian oversight over defense algorithms and a right to digital asylum, the right to a life outside the system. Iron Dome is more than a system. It's a symbol of technological determination, social relief, and national pride. A catalog of victories that reshaped global thinking about modern defense. Those streaks of light in the sky, for some they're a surreal show, but for millions they're physical proof that you can keep living, even with war in the background. To understand what the system means to Israel, we need to look at its biggest successes. The biggest successes of Iron Dome? First, May 2021, Operation Guardian of the Walls. The hardest test in the system's history. Over 11 days, more than 4,000 rockets were fired from Gaza. Iron Dome responded in about 95% of cases where the system predicted civilian casualties. Over Tel Aviv alone one night, it intercepted 240 rockets in 30 minutes. For operators, an hour of tension bordering on euphoria. For residents, that strange silence after the booms. For the world, a show of force no other army could match. Headlines called it a digital miracle. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. Every story opened with the same shot. A beam of light cutting the sky like a lightsaber. Reaction time, milliseconds. Effectiveness, surprisingly high even for its creators. Second, Sderot. Thanks to the dome, some call it the unbreakable town. No other place symbolizes Iron Dome's effectiveness like Sderot. A city barely a kilometer from Gaza, under constant fire for years, and yet functioning, breathing, raising generations of children who live with alarms, but not in fear. In 2014, the system intercepted over 90% of rockets fired at the city. In 2021, over 96%. Those are not just numbers, they're a statement. We're not leaving. The sky can be dangerous, but it can still be ours. In July 2022, Hezbollah tried a saturation attack. 14 rockets in 12 seconds, each fired from a different launcher with different trajectories and changing speeds. Iron Dome, now boosted with new AI algorithms, identified them all and destroyed every single one. Operators said one thing afterwards. That was the moment the system outran us. The computers moved faster than any human reflex, and that marked a threshold. Humanity stepped into a new era of defense. In 2023, Gaza changed tactics. Fewer rockets, more kamikaze drones, gliders, balloons with explosives. Iron Dome, originally built for rockets, got an algorithmic upgrade and handled the new threat. For the first time in history, it intercepted an object flying below 100 kilometers per hour. There was no huge salvo, no thunder, but it was proof. The system is flexible, alive, ready for the unpredictable. In 2024, opinion polls showed Iron Dome as the most positively viewed state institution in Israel, above hospitals, universities, even the army. That's not just data, it's trust, crystallized. People felt they were not alone, that behind the siren, behind the streaks of light, there was a state that was awake. System operators became heroes. The alert app became a daily ritual. The siren sound became the start of hope, not the end of it. Schools teach kids how the system works. But kids don't ask if it will work. They know it will. The trust is no longer technical. It's generational, cultural, rooted like a prayer. And that is Iron Dome's greatest victory. Not that it works. That it gives people a moment to breathe. Even in a place where the air sometimes feels made of alarms. After that, the dome stopped being just Israeli. It went global as a symbol, a universal archetype of hope, that even in the 21st century, it's possible to build something that does what it promises, that doesn't just react, but saves. And the failures? Every miracle has a shadow. Iron Dome is a masterpiece, but not an invincible armor. Where total trust exists, every failure resonates like an earthquake. When a society believes the sky no longer kills, every casualty becomes a systemic shock. The dome's failures are not just military, they're emotional, psychological, social. First, Holon, 2021. May 17, 2021, 1902. Holon. A rocket hits a bus right before it reaches the stop. Iron Dome does not fire. Later analysis shows the system predicted impact in an unbuilt area. The trajectory shifted in the last seconds. Result: 8 injured, a national trauma. The question isn't, did something go wrong? The question becomes, is this still technology or fate? Media explode. Did the machine fail? Or the human? Is the dome getting old? A new phrase appears, trust error. It's no longer about something not working. It's about something that was expected to work every time. Second, Ashkelon, 2014. During Operation Protective Edge, Hamas launches its most intense rocket campaign to date. The system, impressive as it is, can't keep up. Physically, it cannot intercept everything. Algorithms have to choose what to destroy, what to let pass. Rockets hit Ashkelon. Residents ask the one question that hurts most. Who decided my street wasn't worth defending? In that moment, Iron Dome stops being a neutral tool. It becomes a value judgment. And judgment means emotion. Tension grows between effectiveness and fairness. Third, Netavot, 2022. August. Sweltering evening. Power failures in the south send part of the system into backup mode. For nearly 30 minutes, the Netavot area is not fully covered. A rocket lands on the town's outskirts. No casualties. But online, the outrage is loud. Does this mean we're second-class citizens? It was a simple technical fault. But in a society living under the code, every minute without the system is a dark mirror, showing how fragile our faith is in what's supposed to be unbreakable. Fourth, the plain human error in a digital world. In 2023, during test runs in the Negev, an operator mistags a signal as a real threat. Tamir is launched and explodes in the air with no target. Losses, $1 million. Comment: it's just a machine. Except, a human pressed enter. The debate ignites. Should humans still have control? Or is it humans who keep the system from being perfect? A wave of firings, retraining, and a quiet question among officers. Are we the weakest link now? Every success makes society forget the world before the dome. Every failure, even tiny, turns into a feeling of betrayal. The system operates in the real world, but people demand godlike precision. Zero errors, zero victims, zero surprises. Time, though, is against it. New threats are more complex, smarter, more automated. Iron Dome is no longer just fighting rockets. It's fighting time, expectations, the myth of its own infallibility. When the dome fails, it's not just a technical failure. It's the failure of a self-image. Every rocket that slips through, every casualty, every flash over Tel Aviv that wasn't intercepted, is a moment when society takes a deeper breath. Not just from fear, but from a need for reality. Because maybe, paradoxically, only disappointment reminds us that we live under a real sky, not under a shield. And that may be the biggest paradox of the dome. It protects so well that every crack feels like the end of the world. And now, back to Aaron and his family. 8:21 a.m. Aaron leaves the apartment. He doesn't take his laptop. Or his briefcase. Just his keys and his phone, muted. Normally, he greets the neighbor from the third floor. Today, he just nods. He stays silent. Because he doesn't know what to say. The streets of Tel Aviv look like they always do, and yet they don't. Despite the sun, something heavy hangs in the air. Maybe dust, maybe anxiety. At the corner of Dizengoff and Kaplan, a smashed window. At Rabin Square, marks from putting out a fire. A few blocks further, yellow-black police tape. Behind it, the Kirya, the heart of the IDF, the decision center, the spine of the army. It doesn't look destroyed, but it doesn't look certain either. Gate closed, empty, no statements. Aaron stops, looks up, at the radar dome that, just yesterday, was a symbol of safety. Today, a reminder that there is no symbol you can't hit, no algorithm that never fails, no decision that's always right. And then, for the first time since the night, he hears the question that's been humming in the background of his thoughts. Does Iron Dome actually still work? Or are we just too afraid to check if it doesn't? A woman with a dog walks past. Somewhere, a tram bell rings. Life is coming back, but on different terms. Aaron doesn't know the answer, but he keeps walking. Because he has to. In Israel, even fear has a timetable. War doesn't do weekends. When Iron Dome fails, it's not just technology that fails. It's the identity of a system that, for years, was more than a shield. It was a national mythology for a new generation. Every missed rocket, every casualty, every explosion over Tel Aviv is not just an algorithm's error. It's a crack in the collective picture of safety. A moment when a hardened digital society suddenly takes a deeper breath. Not out of panic, out of hunger for something real. Because maybe, paradoxically, only failure reminds us that we live under a real sky. Not under a shield, not under code, not under a system. Under a sky that sometimes doesn't answer. And maybe that's why the attack of June 13th, 2025 wasn't just a military failure. It was an existential warning. Not just for Israel, for everyone. Because Aaron's question is a global one. Will technology protect us from everything? And if it won't, who will protect us from the illusion that it will? You've just watched the second episode of our series on Iron Dome. But this isn't just a series about technology. It's a story about what happens when people stop trusting not only their government, but their own sky. Because if the system is wrong, if the army stays silent, if the algorithm doesn't recognize the warhead, then who will spot the danger before it's too late? Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Because what's coming next might be part of your world too.